special educational needs and disabilities, and then we can have a discussion about what's happening for your children specifically. Jo, can you move the slide on, please?
Oh,
no, apparently not.
Made that noise before. A moment, caller. Okay. I think it was just a bit slow. Does that look better, Gayle?
Oh, that's not a whole slide.
Oh,
there we go. That's it. We're there. We're there. Okay. So I am going to try and split the presentation into 2 slides. One is for children who've got education, health and care plans at the moment, and one is for children who are on SEN support. So, and I'm just going to minimize that on my screen so I can see my slide. So for children who have education, health and care plans at the moment, the guidance says that those children can still go to school if their parents want them to, and that is because they're classed as vulnerable. So if your child has an education, health and care plan and you want them to be in school, you need to make school aware of that and ask for them to have a place. And you can change your mind. So if originally you said, no, I'm going to keep my child at home, and you're 2 weeks in and you're going, what was I thinking? Then you can change your mind and you can say to school, actually, please can I have a place? And you can ask for them to have a place. The legal duty to deliver provision in section F of the plan, if they are in school, hasn't changed. So if they're going in, they should be getting the provision that's in their EHC plan. But I think in reality, it's advisable to work with schools to find reasonable alternatives where it's really not possible to deliver some sections of a plan. So for instance, if your child has social story work as part of a small group in their plan and no one else in their social story group is attending, something will need to change around that. But overall, schools should be making their best endeavours to deliver the plan. None of the duties for them have changed. By virtue of the fact that all children in special schools have education and health and care plans, special schools should still be open. There might be circumstances, and the reality is that we're hearing lots of these circumstances at the moment in Hampshire, where special or mainstream schools can't offer children a full-time timetable. In those circumstances, the school should be working with families to provide online learning that's differentiated to meet the child's needs on the days when they're not in school. And health providers should still be doing all they can to provide therapies. If that isn't happening for your child, then the first port of call is the school or the therapist, and the next is the local authority, because for children with education, health and care plans, the local authority are ultimately responsible for the provision in the plan. Interestingly, when it comes to school closures, it's worth bearing in mind that the guidance to schools doesn't call for schools to actively limit the number of children on site as a mitigation against infection. The only reason they should be limiting the number of pupils is if there are insufficient staff ratios for the teaching. So they shouldn't be saying we're going to have 50% kids because that will make it safer. There's no allowance for that within the guidance. It's only if there aren't enough teachers to teach. If a child is with an EHC plan isn't attending school because a parent has chosen to keep them at home, that's an option that all of parents have, and there is no comeback for doing that, so you're not going to be fined for non-attendance in that case. And the school should be offering online children in the school to be differentiated.
Okay.
But to be possible.
Is Gayle cutting out for everyone else?
I think.
Oh yeah, she's cut out now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was my network or.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, Gayle, we've stopped your prime.
Where did I get to?
The last bullet point on the paragraph.
Was I talking about if
the schools
children who have EHC plans are not in school? Did we get to there? All right. So yeah, as a parent, you can choose for your child with an education, health and care plan to not be in school, to stay at home. And in that case, the child should be offered the school's online learning in the same way that other children in the school are being offered it, and it should be differentiated for them. But the school don't have to make all of the provision that is in the EHC plan available virtually if you choose to have them at home. It's unlikely that it would be possible to do that or reasonable to do that, and that is why children with AHC plans are entitled to be in school instead. If you choose to have them at home, that's absolutely reasonable, and there are lots of really, really good reasons why people are choosing to keep their children at home. If that's the case, then I would urge you to try and work with the school to arrange alternative support for the key areas of the plan and keep tweaking things as you discover what's working for your child and what isn't working for your child. But there's no escaping the fact that children with education, health and care plans who are learning from home are likely to be disproportionately affected by the lockdown compared to their peer group. And I know that's something, Joe, that the National Network of Parent Carer Forums are raising at all levels of government at the moment, that the impact, that the disproportionate impact that the lockdown is having on children with SEN. And finally, on this slide, if your child's school is closed or you're unable to or is unable to offer them provision for any reason, and you really strongly feel that the child needs to be in school, maybe you don't have the technology or the skills to support them at home, or maybe school time is really valuable, vital respite for the family, or there's a risk to the child of being at home, then you can ask the local authority to find a temporary place in another local school or special school. And that did happen for some children in the first lockdown, and it is an option this time around again. It's obviously not an ideal situation at all because it's a change of environment for the child, it's unfamiliar adults, but it is an option, and for few children and families it will be a lifeline and it will be preferential to them being at home. So the next slide is the children who are on SEN support, Joe.
So I've got to do it this way.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah, got it right. You get to see me briefly.
Okay, so the children who are on SEN support should be learning from home unless they're vulnerable, and the definition of vulnerable in the guidance is fairly broad. So that includes children who are looked after, children on child protection plans, and children who have been identified as otherwise vulnerable. Otherwise vulnerable includes, for instance, young carers, children who have difficulty engaging with remote education because they lack the devices at home or a quiet place to study. And if your child falls into any of those categories, you should talk to the head teacher, explain why you think that your child meets that vulnerable criteria and ask for a place in school. As a secondary level of vulnerability or definition of vulnerable, schools and the local authority can also use their discretion to offer places to children who need to attend to receive support or need to attend to manage risk to their mental health. Now that's a discretionary offer, so the child's not entitled to it, but the school can work with parents, determine that that child is vulnerable using their discretion and offer them some time in school. And that is where some of the children with SEN who really struggle to engage with the online learning platforms might benefit from attending. And again, if you think your child falls into that category, you should ask school to consider whether or not they can offer them some time in school. For those children on SEN support who don't attend, and that will be the vast majority of children on SEN support, they will be learning from home. Those children should be given access to the online learning offer in the same way as the other children in school, and the work must be differentiated for them. We've had some really positive stories coming through our triage and personal stories as well from among the team, where homework has been differentiated, special resources are being provided for children on SEN support, additional tasks are being set, teaching assistants are working one-to-one, they're getting Zoom breakout rooms for children to get teaching assistant support or small group support. But we're also aware that some children aren't getting any differentiated work. And if that's the case, in the first instance, you should speak to the class teacher, the head and the governors, and it's also something that Ofsted will investigate if there is a trend of that being the case within a school setting. The guidance is really clear that the differentiated work must be made available. It's part of the school's statutory duty to make their best endeavours to secure special education provision for children with SEN, and nothing about the pandemic changes that. Again, as with children with EHCPs, there remains a really real risk that children on SEN support are going to be disproportionately disadvantaged in terms of their learning in lockdown compared to their peer group. And I think all we can do as parents is keep doing our best, keep trying really hard to keep the relationships with school strong, and keep giving feedback about what more we feel could be done. And that really is what the final bullet point about. There are lots and lots of resources out there to support home learning. So if school are not sending anything home while you're having those discussions about what you'd like to see, there is some support out there that you can call on. We've got lots and lots of resources on our website, and there's lots on social media. And I'd also urge everyone here tonight and everyone who's listening to this on playback to just keep making use of groups like the HPCN get-togethers, where there are those opportunities to meet other parents who are in the same situation. While no two children are going to be going through exactly the same thing, opportunities like this are so important for us as parents to keep our mental health in a positive place at the moment. So the final slide, Joe, is just